Hi, I'm Tiffany, and welcome to the Album Diaries. Here I'll be chatting about personal experiences that influenced my musical journey and career. I'll talk monthly about the albums and how they affected my personal life.
Hey friends, welcome to Tiffany, the Album Diaries. This is episode one of 12. We will be talking over the next course of the several months, really digging into what makes Tiffany tick and what was going on during these album makings. I'm your host, Lindsay Lawler. I'm also a really good friend of Tiffany's, right?
Yes.
Thought so. Just making sure.
That's why she's here. She's here to make me laugh because I'm telling my story.
Well, and tell them, so just to kick off, I want to really talk about why you decided to do this, because it's people out there, everybody knows about Tiffany, obviously, and your dedicated fans know a lot about your life. And
More than I do. I know. They
Right.
refresh my memory all the time. But you might not know some of these stories. It really is about my life, the behind the scenes, the good, the bad, the ugly, and what my true experiences are. In interviews, it's very hard to talk about, what was going on in my brain, or, what was said to me maybe that morning by my mom or a family member. That's not something you really put on interviews.
Mhm.
But
The opposite.
yeah,
We'll tell you to cover
exactly.
that up.
They're like,
Yeah.
and so all of these things affect you, especially as you're recording a song or about to do a special interview, or sometimes like the Grammys. I mean, people can really fuck you up. I mean, they
Yep.
really can, and then you're not shining. Unfortunately, that has been some of the tales of my life. I think my family didn't know anything about the music industry. And obviously there was dynamics in my family with alcoholism and lack of confidence and communication and all of that. And how that really affected me as a person growing up, and how I saw the life, my life, and then got the opportunity to be, a singer, real, happening. But those things carried on with me, definitely. And my home life didn't change much. So I thought, again, there's so much social media going on right now. And you guys see me, doing my little videos and things, getting better. But if I was going to really participate in a podcast or a series, I wanted to talk about something that's real, that is really, that's me and what makes me tick. And I don't think you get that in interviews. You only get that literally having a cup of tea and sitting down with a good friend and, talking about, wow, that sucked, or that was a highlight. So I hope to be bringing some stories that you guys don't know and getting to know me a little bit more.
Because here's the thing, and first of all, welcome to the living room, and that's the feel we want to go for. And the thing is that I think, especially through COVID and the ups and downs of this world, like, people are dying for truth and realness right now.
Yes.
And that is you. I know Tiffany to be truly one of the most authentic people I've ever met. And there's no way that would be the case. I mean, your career's been too long if you wouldn't have been this authentic, right? And so for you to get the time now, because people forget that also a human, celebrities also humans, and you're right that if you're having a shitty day or something happened, or your family's alcoholism is playing into that day, it doesn't matter, the show must go on.
Exactly.
So we really want to dive into some of that and then help some of you out there feel like, not as alone. Not
Definitely.
alone now.
You are not alone, for sure.
Didn't even plan that.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
It just rolls itself out. But yeah, definitely, when I was recording the first album, which was Tiffany, there was so many dynamics. Obviously, I've been singing for a long time, starting at 9 years old, kind of professionally, just kind of rolled into it. No one in my family was a musician, so there was no reference. But again, my mom was a great mother. I love my mom, don't get me wrong. But, definitely had some issues with self-esteem. Her own family, there was a lot of alcoholism. So my mom didn't really find her voice until way later on in life, which is the positive message.
Yes. It's always time.
But, I was kind of an old soul. I always just came out as a little girl, telling people what to do and knowing what I hope to do.
That hasn't changed.
That hasn't changed. But, I do think that God makes people, there's no mistakes, in my opinion. And for me, in that family situation, my strong personality made me survive it because it was kind of crazy. You had, alcoholism, good people that just got caught up into some things and obviously took them in a different direction. And when they were drinking, they weren't the loving people that, was the norm family for me. And that was my uncle, my grandfather, my aunt, my mom. So, it was, you never knew who was going to be off the rails. And I lived with my grandmother at the time. My mom and I did for a long time before she met my stepfather, who was instrumental in helping my career. And they dated for a very long time. And then when we first got, they first got married, we first all moved in together. My dad was really strict. He was military. He never had any kids before. And we butted heads big time. But the one thing that he brought out in me was music. He kept hearing me sing always in the bedroom if I was busted because I had a thing about singing so all the time. That was my thing. So Tiffany, don't do that. So you're gonna get in trouble. So I just had to say it so even if it was under my breath. So I always got put in my bedroom where I would sing and entertain. And one day he just said, "Is this what you want to do? Because you seem to want to do this. You're already dancing." I was a dancer. And,
You're how old at this time?
I'm like 8, 9 at this time.
Okay.
And I said, "Yeah, I really want to sing." So he challenged me to get up, and I did. And then that was how it started to happen. But from that point on, that all hell broke loose in my family because, again, my mom was pregnant at the time. She felt my dad was kind of spending too much time working, his own company, and then on the weekends taking me everywhere. My mom was making my own, the outfits and everything for me, but she was a great seamstress. But she's pregnant, so a lot of emotions anyway.
And not drinking.
So there's that, I didn't know what was going on at the time. So very fragile. And now every weekend spent running around with her daughter and, all the attention. So there was a lot of fights between my parents. I would hear them always arguing. And I always felt bad. Like, this is tearing the family apart. Maybe this isn't a good thing. So I spent a lot of time crying before a show because it's total classic case. Screaming at each other then, okay, go out and sing. Yeah.
Go entertain
everything's
everybody.
Perfect. And I learned that, but really I learned to have a sadness about me for a long time. Feel bad, then shine. Feel bad, then shine. And then when you go home, you dissect it all. And I learned that as a kid, and it's taken me many years to get out of that. So I started singing. I loved singing, but I don't know if I was having fun. It's a weird thing. Now that I'm putting it together, I was like, it's taken me a long time to go, I actually enjoy this. This is fun. Well, it doesn't have to be crazy or arguing or, every career is kind of like that still. There's so many people around you, and energy is a big thing, as we are moon sisters, and we believe in energy and frequency, and I totally do. And I didn't know any of that at the time. So I was constantly trying to balance it, and emotionally it was crazy. Going and doing the first album when I got the record, having a manager that was so controlling, and a mom that was sober at that time after a divorce, losing her kids. That's when I got my record deal. So, it really played out that I was living in my apartment with my mom, single at that time, my mom. And here comes along George Tobin, who wants to have us do a record deal, which is great, right? My mom doesn't know anything about the music industry. $3,500, sign the first contract, which is nothing. And then basically...
Well, I want to stop you right there real quick because, walk me through, if that's the case, I would say a couple things. First of all, think about it for y'all out there. This wasn't a time where parents were supportive. It was always back then, it was like, oh, that's cute, want to be a singer, but what are you really going to do with your life, right? I always say my definition of success was when my dad stopped asking me what my backup plan was, which was yesterday. So the fact that you, when your stepdad did come into the picture, that you did have that support. Then prior to that, your mom, I want to talk about, because you mentioned your mom, sort of the jealousy thing when this started happening. Right. That because she was a fabulous, over the top human, but enter child Tiffany, who you were just wanting to sing. You weren't trying to be limelight, spotlight, but you have to be that. So what did that do for that dynamic between you and your mom?
I think, it's weird. My mom and I had a very close relationship, extremely close, but yet we were two separate, different people. I was so much like her sister, which I think there was that, it went past me and more towards jealousy of that. My auntie was very vibrant, hippy dippy. My mom was a little bit more, I don't want to say the word conservative because she wasn't, but she was quiet. Reserved a little bit. She loved fashion and she loved hair and she loved all of that. But her personality was very, quiet, very meek. It took her a long time, like I said, to find her voice. Mm-hmm. I was very proud of my mom at the end of her life because she could do it sober and she could tell you how she felt. But the early, portion of my life growing up, my mom was kind of fragile. And my aunt was not. She was, a wild child, totally two different sisters. And I was guiding towards more of my aunt. I totally got her. I was very close to her. Whereas her daughter, my cousin Darla, was very close to my mom. So it was like they had each other, if you will. And I think that was the struggle because I spoke a different language already from my mom. And I was big and vibrant. And nothing really bothered me, and if it did, I just hit it. I just moved on. And I'm very much like that, mind over matter now, and then later on I process stuff. Whereas my mom was more like, oh no, I have to deal with this. I'm not happy, so I have to feel it. And then the world has to stop. And we have to arrange things or melt down. And a lot of that was with my family like that. And I kind of, again, as a young adult, just went, I don't want to do that. So we headbutted a lot. And I was over the top a little bit. I love fashion, but different from my mom, of course. Yeah. And the way that I spoke was more matter of fact. Well, this has to be done. I don't know where I got that from. Maybe my stepfather, who was military, started already rubbing off of me. And that just really shut my mom down. I was too harsh for her. I was making decisions too quickly. And I was a kid. So she felt like, well, hold on, I'm the mom.
Yeah, well, and is any of that, though, like, it's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like it was this place where she didn't want you to be the grown-up, but a lot of ways you had to be the grown-up. So it's like, what do you want, Mom?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm trying to, and was there that pressure there that you had to carry the family? Because you kind of became the family business, right?
I did. Prior even to the singing, it was me taking care of the family in a sense of, you have a timeout. You go sit down. You are going to jail. Okay? You're totally out of control. Yeah, I was an adult. So that's exactly it. It was, I love you, Mom, but I am leery of the adults in my family. You guys aren't making really great decisions here. And, I'm putting the pieces back together. When my mom would have a fight with my stepfather, she would sit down and confide in me. Well, of course, this is a person I didn't really like anyway. It took me, again, years to really have a relationship with my stepfather. And, I would be like, you learn that later on, that couples, they fight, they say things, and then they forgive. Yeah. Well, as 9, 10 years old, I was like, oh no, we hate him. You told me I was way too much information.
We love him today.
For a kid. So yeah, I started building this big resentment towards my dad because of those situations. And it took me years later, like I said, to realize that that's what couples do. That's an adult thing. No one really taught me any of that. So I had all these highs and lows of emotion. And, I'm not talking to my stepfather this day because he hurt my mom, but now my mom seems okay with it. What's happening here? Then you go to my grandparents' house and they're fighting. And, it was always around me in a way. And I think that, definitely affect me as an artist later on singing songs like Could Have Been, or, oh gosh, even All This Time, the sadness in those songs, the hopelessness, the awkward, the what ifs, I completely understood from being a child.
Okay, so what's so interesting about that, so the year's 1987, Tiffany, the record came out. How did they come up with the name Tiffany for the record?
Because it's my name.
Oh, right.
I didn't
Crack
want
marketing team.
I didn't want to choose between my stepfather and my real father. Williams, Darwish, either name, great. And I thought, well, you know, it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. At that time, I was living with my stepfather, and he was really the person who was making my dreams come true, if you will, put me in all the right places, and believed in me at least, and believed in my talent. And then I had my dad, who I was really close to. So I suggested just Tiffany, and it worked out.
And it worked.
Perfect.
Seems to be working good.
Seems to be going well.
So we're talking about the Tiffany, the album Diaries. Year's 1987 when the first record Tiffany comes out. And the songs you referenced just a bit ago, because I was listening to the record again on the way in today, and it's outside of, you know, obviously Could Have Been, and I think We're Alone Now, and I saw him standing there, but then there's the Could Have Been is very sad, but these tracks where you're talking about intimate moments with in relationships with men, what, you know, it could be
Didn't have those.
family, didn't have them, but family. But think about that, singing, and you deliver it so.
Yeah, it was like it made me an old soul right off the bat of being around drama, being around chaos, being around sadness, being around great people that were struggling. And again, I love my family, but they had issues, and they battled. So somewhere I tapped into that and totally understood it, and then took it to music. You know, for me, it could have been, it was like, oh, this song is really mature. I was like, I don't think so. I've seen this happen all the time. Plus, you're a teenager, and you do think that the first time you fall in love, that's it. It's going to be forever. And when it doesn't work out, you're never going to fall in love again.
You've learned that.
Could have been really definitely spoke to me. But I do think that, you know, again, going into the studio was a great break from being at the house. Because again, it was always on pins and needles. I never knew who was going to kick off, what was going to happen. And going to the studio was like my space. I loved it. I loved the vocal booth. It's like being in a closet to me. It's everything just closes. No one can touch me, especially when you're singing. They don't want to mess it up, so they leave you alone. And I loved it.
Your therapy, your safe space.
That was my safe space, definitely. That's where I started to learn to write songs, mostly poetry. But, you know, I wouldn't leave the vocal booth. They'd be like, okay, we're going to just go through. Back then, they had like tape and the machines and all that. They'd have to do all that stuff, splice stuff. So it'd be a minute. And I would be like, I'm fine in here. And I would just write things out, write poetry. And I knew I wanted to be a songwriter, but I didn't know anything about it. Didn't play an instrument. That was my safe space. That's where it started.
So at that time then as well, what did your relationships with girlfriends look like? Because you were 14 when this album came out? Is that right?
14 when I recorded it, 15 when it came out.
What did relationships at school with girls, and I know you've talked about this publicly a bit, but if we're really going to dive in, which we are, and by the way, just to make note, both Tiffany's parents have passed, which is the interesting timing of why you're a little bit kind of starting to look back, reflect on life, and feel comfortable, might I say.
I miss them so much. I miss my family. And now I think I've come to full circle again. You know, I'm learning what makes me tick. And a lot of those, what you perceive to be bad, when you're, again, over it, healed, in a safe space, you look back at it and you go, yeah, that sucked. But you know what? I did get something out of it. I am a strong person. I'm a resilient person. I can overcome. I know I don't want to do that with my life. Mm-hmm. You know, again, it's not judging somebody, but it's going, that didn't work out. You know, I've got a perfect slate of how that goes down. And I think that, again, that childhood, that upbringing actually saved my ass later on in Hollywood, because I knew, addiction isn't fun. No one starts out to say, I'm going to be a total addict and it's going to ruin my life. And, I'm not going to be able to make decisions, and I'm going to have, emotional problems and just be, a mess. No one says that. It starts out subtle and then becomes something else. So that it kept me away from that. My childhood really saved me, again, because I was in an excessive environment by the time I was 15, 16. My friends became Hollywood, but I wasn't from Hollywood. And I always felt as like I was an outsider. I didn't come from money. My parents weren't famous. I felt like I did have to hide, that there's some issues there. So I would go in and out of Hollywood and do the whole, but I couldn't really speak the language. That was, again, having parental support, or my dad's a lawyer, or I grew up in Hollywood High, and I was like, I don't have any of this. And I would go home to my girlfriends who were normal people. They were having babies already. They, got kicked out of school.
Like teenagers having
14,
babies.
15, and 16. Yeah, Norwalk, representing Norwalk. Word. We're just a small little community outside of East LA. Most of my friends were, Mexican. A lot of gangs. Most of my friends were gang members. Back then it was a little different than what it is now. But yeah, they were being jumped in, and that was it. So, it was a total different life. I would go back to Norwalk and didn't really, after a while, have much in common with that either.
Yeah.
But, yet they were my friends, and they didn't want anything from me except, hey Tiff, what's going on? We cut up and that kind of thing. But it got harder. I felt like for a long time I didn't belong anywhere.
I was about to say, it sounds like you didn't feel like you had a real place, and obviously music became that, which, as we know now, fast forward into life, obviously it's where she belongs and where she always belonged. Real quick though, because we talked about just energy and what we hold on to ourselves, and you are a successful songwriter, so obviously all the stories you've lived are important. At what point in your life, and this is probably a different record, which we'll touch on another episode, but at what point did you realize you have to deal with these things, or else they might turn you into
this morning, I'm
right
still
this
feeling
minute.
What do you think I brought you guys here for?
Welcome to therapy.
Exactly. I wasn't kidding. No, I really do. I am currently soul searching. I'm getting more into meditation, holistic healing. I've been going through some health stuff. Thank God it can be worked out. But these are all little tips of pay attention to me.
That's right.
And emotionally as well. With COVID, it really rocked me, as I'm sure so many people. But I went from fighting my family and loving my family to really deeply missing my family. And everyone has passed away except for my sisters. But I missed that guidance, even though I never had it. Mm-hmm. Silly, right? But I just wanted to talk to my dad. I just wanted to have a fight with my mom. And not that they could do anything to really prepare you for COVID. Nobody's been through this. But I just felt so alone that I couldn't talk to an elder in my family. I realized I'm the elder. That's scary. And for me, it started a soul search. And I thought, well, this might be something that some of my fans want to see. Some people want to see, again, about mental health, about growing, about challenging yourself, about talking about these things. We've, as girlfriends, have talked about it. And good friends are so important. And even though I went through a while that I didn't have some people in my life, but now the ones that I do, I hold on so dearly because they really do. They keep me sane. And you have to laugh and you have to cry and you have to, even, it's a weird thing, even celebrate your failures.
Yeah.
Because you keep going, hopefully, and you learn something. Oh shit, that hurt. I don't want to do that. That was messy. Whatever it is. And I'm just willing to share these things now because I think people want, to be better. And I think that's what hopefully COVID made us. I'm trying to get it back together because we're going to do so much and be better. And then it kind of slowly gets back to me. And I'm still in that mindset of, no, I had something good going and I want to stay real and I want to stay true. And I want people to know and engage with me, not just musically, but on a human level.
So tell us, we'll wrap this up shortly so that we can then move to the second album. But I would love to know if you can remember when Tiffany came out, the first record, your best memory of that time and also your most difficult memory from that, like specific best and worst highlights of that time when the album was being released.
The best memory of that time period is when I recorded the album. I had just finished the album and just started doing the mall tour. And Nina Blackwood came to my school. And that was amazing because I felt like a celebrity. I loved MTV. And of course, that was fantastic. But, you get to see people for real. At your school. All these people weren't my friends, wanted to be my friends, and I love that because a lot of them I never got along with. And now they were trying to be my buddy, and I was like, not really, I don't really. So it was my moment.
That's a good moment.
And then my friends who were really my friends, it was kind of cool. We were celebrating. We're like, all right, we're going to go on a cool journey. And we did. I mean, I took a lot of them on the road with me, and that kind of began a different life for me. So it was that turning point. Bad memories would be, being yelled at the studio sometimes. It was late at night. A lot of times the work ethic, I was at the studio a lot, going to this, school still in the morning. The grades weren't so great. Hearing the arguments between my mom and the producer. And again, there was that feeling of, this is so heavy already. I've got people fighting around me. I'm exhausted already. I'm getting bad grades, and I don't know if I can even go to the studio if I get bad grades. But how do you become a super student, which I wasn't a great student to begin with, and spend the hours that you're spending?
And a superstar at the same time.
It doesn't work. So I kind of felt like I was always wearing these different hats and just being whatever I needed to be at the moment, and never really knowing if my mom would pull me going to the studio or pull the mall tour because of the grades. Later on, that became an issue. But, I think that was the thing, is that some days it just really tapped into a bad feeling. And it was like, why is this so difficult? Where's the celebration in my music and my talent and the opportunity that I've been given?
Definitely, as we go through this journey with you, I want to talk about that because that piece that you said at the beginning, that I realized I wasn't having fun. That's huge as we strive, that joy is the key here in life, that we're supposed to be doing. And, thank God you've found that joy and know that your voice is the core and the anchor of that. So I want to dive into that as we move forward. So as we wrap this up, though, if you could leave us with one thought about what you want people to remember, this record specifically, what you would want from the listener standpoint to take away of how that record, not your music or your voice in general, but how that record should make them feel in order to connect to where you are and where you were at that point.
I think that is the essence of it, is connection. I have a lot of fans out there that love the music, but there was something about me that we connected. And I do think it is the sorrow in a weird way. It was the awkwardness that I had sometimes on camera, still have. The insecurity, the meekness, if you will. Because, I would sing and be bold, but then I was kind of quiet.
So as we wrap this up, I would love for you to tell your listeners, your fans, your followers, your friends, when Tiffany, the record, the first album came out in 1987, what is the feeling you would like them to remember and feel that you were feeling, so you are connected in that place with them?
I think that, the biggest impression, the thing that made the most impression on me is the connection that I have with you guys. All over the world, it was deeper than just music. I think you felt my heart. And later on, as the years have passed, I've heard stories of your childhood, or where you were emotionally, or lots of different scenarios. And we were connected. It wasn't just young teen awkward. It was some of us really searching for who we are and finding our way in some challenging situations.
That's connection. It's what keeps us together. It's why you make music. And this is exciting. I look forward to each one of these. We'll be releasing one every month. And we'll dive into the second album and what was going on. We're always going to, kind of go back and forth to current days and where you are in life, but we're really digging into the core of it. So thank you all for joining us. Tune back next month. Tiffany, The Album Diaries. I'm Lindsay Lawler. We love you. Stay connected.
Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for all updates. Thanks.